Hey everyone, today we are talking to Mark Hill, a commercial and unit photographer who has worked with Jeremy for a very long time. And I've known Mark for almost 20 years now as well.
Yeah. So Mark was my boss and mentor at Turner Broadcasting. We worked there together for how long were we actually there together?
Probably 12 years,
Yeah, somewhere in that
I
range. But
would
you
think.
you were there what, 20 total,
21.
21 years. And then you were laid off first. I was laid off later. That's just how the company and business goes. And when you left there, you went heavy into unit photography, despite doing every other type of commercial photography and advertising and all sorts of different ways. But there was a lot more work being in Atlanta doing unit photography. And for people who don't know, describe just unit photography for us.
Yeah. What is it?
Well, whenever a network is shooting a movie or a television show, there's always a still photographer embedded with the camera team to capture marketing and PR photography for for the network so that they can just sell the show. That's the main reason why you're there. You also have other needs to shoot prop photography for the actual show. So like if there's a scene where there's a panning shot of the kitchen and there's family pictures on the refrigerator, we would shoot those. I've shot book covers, I've shot album covers, I've shot Time magazine covers. Just anything you can imagine that it has the character on it is shot by the unit stills guy.
Yeah. And it's just,
And
go ahead.
you do, you've done some movies as well.
I have,
Yeah,
I
not
have,
just shows.
yeah.
Most people don't realize that that's even a job, or for some people, they don't realize that's a job. And you and I have both done it for a long time, and I do it a lot less, but people don't realize that you're not there every single day. And how does that process break down of like when you're going to be there and when you're not going to be there?
Well, it really depends on the network and the type of show you're on. If you're on a movie, you're going to be there every single day. If you're on a television show that has really high profile talent, or something that the scenes are changing different every day, you could be there 4 days a week, maybe. If you're on a show that there's just a lot of people talking back and forth and it's basically the same set every day, then you could be there as little as 2 days per episode. So it really depends on the network and the budget and the needs of the network, really.
Typically, you get hired. Would it be the PR team most of the time?
No,
What
it'd be
marketing team?
the photo departments of the networks hire me. So I'm the only person on set that's not hired by by the production itself. I'm hired by the network or the studio. So I really don't have a boss on set. I'm there. I know what I need to shoot. At times I will shoot off of the show, like do the things that not necessarily what the show is shooting, because I know that I need elements for marketing and publicity that the show doesn't really even care about.
And I
Such as
think that's
like background
something that's,
noise.
yeah. And I think that's something that's interesting because a production team can be a tight group of people that have been working together for years. And then coming in as the unit photographer, you're this outsider a little bit if you haven't worked, if you don't know the people. And they also, I've been on some where they see you as the network person and they're like, are you trying to mess things up? How do you keep that balance of making friends, making the AD your friend so you can get what you need and not cause any issues?
Well, I mean, firstly, you have to look like you know what you're doing. You have to dress the part. Like I wore my black hoodie today because this is very typical of what I wear to work. I wear all black every day. I don't make any noise. My cameras are completely silent. My harness that I wear that my cameras hang off of, they don't make any jangly noises when I'm walking around. And when they say camera roll, I don't move. I stick in my spot because if I'm a distraction to the actors, that's a real problem, because a lot of times there have been times in the past where the actors see me as a distraction, even though I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of standing there taking pictures. I also don't put my camera to my face very often. I hold it down and I look at my screen, which is a nice with the DSLRs. Um, they now have articulating screens that you can like flip up, so I can have my head down, have a baseball hat on, so they don't really see my face, and the only thing that's kind of pointing to that is the camera. And I can also kind of do this sort of thing and not even face them.
Try and hide as much as possible to, out of eyesight, basically.
Yeah.
How thankful are you to have that type of camera, mirrorless now, compared to the blimps we used to use back in the day?
Blimps were the worst, and if you don't know what a blimp is, so back in the film days, the cameras obviously would make noise. You press the button and it would go, and then the winder would move the film, and they were pretty noisy. So we would put our cameras in a box, and the only thing you could touch is the shutter or the autofocus, and it cut about 90% of the sound out of the cameras. They were big and bulky and hard to handle, and you always have to hold them up to your face, and it was a pain in the ass,
It's like a
honestly.
giant box, basically. You have to put your camera in. Super
Exactly.
heavy.
Yeah. And it always was a conversation point. Any talent who had never seen one was like, what is this? Is this an old timey camera? Because it's just like always matte black and just this huge thing. And they were always like, what is this, the 1800s? I'm like, just smile. I don't.
Yeah, just don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I still have my blimps. They're worthless now. The only thing they would be really useful for is to protect the camera if I was shooting in the pouring rain or in the mud or something like that. I could opt to put my cameras inside the blimp just to protect it, but it would really be a drag. I
My
would
guess
hate.
is if it was those conditions, they would probably not be shooting
Oh,
uncontrolled in
no,
those
you are
conditions
totally
anyway.
wrong.
you're
Oh,
totally
really?
wrong.
Yeah. My very first day on set of anything I've ever shot was a John Frankenheimer film for TNT called Andersonville. It was all about the Andersonville Civil War internment camps that the Confederates kept all the Union soldiers in. And the very first day I went down there, I mean, it was pouring rain. And I drove to set, and I'm just like, they're not going to be shooting anything. I'm just going to be sitting in my car the whole day. And when I got to set, they were fully working. They were shooting
Yeah.
the show. I mean, it was beautiful. It was raining. I mean, it's like a
Mhm.
lot of times you spend a ton of money to make it rain in the
Yeah.
shows. And I got out there and shot all day, and it was soaked, and the stuff was beautiful.
And that's why you always have to be prepared and have, when you're going on set like that, it's such a lesson of like, have your change of clothes, have your rain gear, have all of that. I had a similar one recently. It was a Bear Grylls contestant show, whatever. I thought I grabbed my rain gear for my camera. I didn't. And it was my only street credit with Bear Grylls is I cut up a rain jacket and made a case for my camera. And he came over, looked at it, he goes, "Oh, that's pretty good, actually." So you gotta get the talent on your side sometimes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I have my rain suit and my shoe covers and everything in the truck. They're there all the time.
how often do you think, and it does happen, but when talent, it seems like the photographer can be a target of, oh, you're in my eye line, oh, you're doing this, even though everyone else is moving around. It is just a noticeable thing that I have seen in multiple sets with different ADs, different talent, all different things. How often do you think that it's just they need someone to vent on and they choose the still photographer because it's the easiest one? Or
Well, I've never been in a situation where I thought that the actor was venting at me or targeting me because they were mad at somebody else. I have had a handful of times where an actor is just really distracted by anything other than the main cameras. So if you think about, I think it's silly, but I mean, I'm not an actor, so I can't really comment on why one person would be more distracting than another. But if you think about a typical setup for a episodic television show, you'll have two cameras on dollies. So you'll have a camera operator on each camera. You'll have a dolly grip on the camera on the whatever the camera is on, whether it's a steady cam or a dolly or whatever. So there'll be a dolly grip on each camera. There'll be a boom operator holding up boom mic, and maybe even two boom operators depending on how many people are talking in the scene. You'll have the first AD who's kind of running the show. They'll be in the periphery. And then you'll have the first assistant cameras pulling focus. So they'll be sitting at their monitors with their focus pulling equipment. So there's a ton of people really in close proximity to what the action that's happening. Of course, if there's stunts, like there's going to be a stunt coordinator really close. There could be actors that are off camera that are also speaking. So like if the camera's not on the main person, there'll be other actors off camera that are also talking. And so how they can pick out the stills photographer and say, you're the one that's distracting me is kind of silly to me, but it certainly has happened. I had a pretty well-known actor who I won't name.
Was it Alec Baldwin?
No, it was not Alec Baldwin, but
We all have a mutual Alec Baldwin story. We won't want to get into it.
Yeah, I think we all have one.
He's not the most pleasant dude in the world.
He was the last time I worked with him, he was spectacular and lovely and like dance. But David Letterman helped me on that, so it's fine.
Yeah, so you can have him. All the Alec Baldwin shoots will go to Jeremy. But this actor, he was so bothered by knowing that I was going to be there that he tossed me this offset before I'd even arrived. I was parking my car and I got a text from the AD department saying, "Don't come for the first scene. He doesn't want you. He doesn't want any distractions on set."
Okay.
So
And
I just
if it's a
sat in my
powerful
chair.
scene and they're in their moment, I could see that it's like you'd want to take as many distractions as possible, but it's still tough because then you have to explain that and go back to the people that hired you and said, "Hey, I can't do anything about this." Is that
Right,
how
and
you handled it?
they know,
Yeah.
and by that point, the network already knows that there's gonna be issues at times, and I mean, I've worked with Academy Award winning actors who I could stand right in front of them and doing jumping jacks, and they wouldn't say a word. So it just really depends on the person.
So, quick question for you. When you're going on set to shoot, obviously production knows whatever they're planning on shooting that day. Are they giving you any sort of direction or set list, or they're like, here are the shots we want, or you just show up and you actually have the ability to shoot what you want to shoot?
I rarely get told what to do. And I think that could be the trust networks have in me, and also the experience I have that when they hire me, they know they don't have to tell me what to do so much. But in my last show, which is The Good Daughter, it'll be on Peacock right around Christmas 2025, maybe in the winter. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. The two main characters, Rose Byrne and Megan Fahey, they knew they needed pictures of them together. And so that was the only call out I had, was at the very, very beginning. They're like, "Hey, make sure you get a lot of pictures of these two ladies together because they're sisters." But that's kind of an obvious thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or the number one and number two people on the call sheet. You kind of know that you have to get them in the same shot.
And
Yeah.
how often do you pick the days what's the balance of the photo team picking the days, or you picking the days, knowing, sometimes one of the people are going to be on set and the other one's not, and different scenes some are very boring photo wise.
Yeah.
So how does that balance work?
Well, it's normally the photo editors and the publicity departments at the networks. They will get the schedule, which is called a one line. And they're really interesting to look at. They're really hard to read. It's filled with acronyms and abbreviations. And I mean, I don't know. I can't read a lot of it sometimes. But so the photo editor and the PR team, and hopefully there's a publicist on the show too. And those three people will confer and decide on what days they think are the best. Some networks allow me to weigh in on what I think is going to be best too, because I'm there. I'm on the ground. I can talk to the producers or even the writer of the show and be like, "Hey, what do you think about this day?" And I can kind of chime in, but I would never dictate.
It is helpful to be the person on site to know how everything's flowing and how the crews are moving, and also to make sure that you're not doing all the overnights.
Well, I mean, that's I mean, the overnights are I don't really get to say no to staying up all night long, even though they're kind of a drag. But like I did a show last year called Teacup for Peacock, and one of the sets was a basement of a kind of a dilapidated house, and it was really small, and it was a really difficult scene with one actor that was had trouble with me being on set. He didn't want anybody in the room. Like if it was his if it had been his way, we would have shot with no camera operators in the room. When I saw that set when they were building it, I let him know. I'm like, look, this is going to be a problem spot, or if there's ever a scene, if you read the one line and it says bathroom, or if it says private jet, those are 2 places that there's rarely a spot for me.
Mhm.
There's just no room. And whether it's a real jet or a set that looks like a little private jet, they're still small, and there's just once you put 2 dollies in a private jet, there's no place for a stills
Yeah,
guy.
you're just gonna be in the way at that point. There's barely any room for anybody to be there.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And but you did come up with a solution recently for one of those. Didn't you mount a camera somewhere and shoot it remotely so that it was like you don't have to be in the room?
Yes, and I mean, that works sometimes. So the Canon cameras, I use the Canon R5, and they're fairly large cameras, but they're smaller than the film cameras, and there's plenty of places that you can mount a camera. I have these little mini Cardellini's, if you know what that is, with a little tripod head on top of it, and I can mount that. But the problem is that it's focused on one specific thing. So if like there's a guy sitting in an airplane seat, and I can set the camera up and pre-focus it on that person and run a pocket wizard out to me and shoot. I just watch the monitors offset and kind of shoot. Unfortunately, if that guy moves or the scene causes him to move, then my shot's gone.
So you might
Um,
get something out of it, but it's not actually anywhere the same as being there actually shooting it.
Well, and my mentor, Hopper Stone, who is one of the great still photographers alive, he shot on the SNL um, movie that was shot last year, came out this year about the first night of Saturday Night Live. And the whole show is shot on Steadicam, and they do what's called a oneer, which is it's a one continuous shot, never stops. That when you're on Steadicam, a lot of times you see the whole world. It's a 360-degree shot, and so unless you can really be just right behind the Steadicam the whole time, you'll never be able to get a shot. So what Hopper did is he worked with the director of photography and the grip department, and he mounted a little tiny Sony camera, about this big, under the matte box of the Steadicam. And so when they were like roll camera, he would go in there and just turn that on, and it would shoot a frame every second, and it just moved with the Steadicam,
That's
and he
great.
got beautiful photography from that.
That's genius. Also, an editing nightmare because you're gonna have to go through so many files.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Want a second.
that's a movie, so all they do is when the movie's done, they just put all the film or all the imagery on a hard drive and send it out to a lab in LA, and they deal with it.
I
Yeah,
guess
so
that's true.
some editor spent weeks going through stills.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
So you are part of the union,
yeah.
and some people may not know that you need to be on most big productions. You can cut out some reality shows or some game shows, but overall, most productions you need to be in the union. So what does that entail? Which union you're part of? Like describe that a little bit to us.
Well, I'm in, ICG, International Cinematographers Guild Local 600. So they call me, I'm a 600 photographer. And so when you join the union, that gives you the ability to work on the biggest shows. Now, the ones that aren't union, I can still work on, but the union would like me to let them know so that they can try to get the smaller shows to become union shows. But when you're talking about like Real Housewives of Atlanta or any of those, like Chrisley Knows Best or any of the other smaller reality shows, they're never union shows. But anything that's above that, even the game shows, because I've worked on Family Feud, and that was a union show. Um, they would all require me to be in the union.
So for most types of photography outside of entertainment, there is no union. There just isn't anything like that. It's kind of particular just for entertainment, right? So can you talk a little bit about what your experience is like, shooting before you were part of a union, and then do you think it's a good thing for the industry? Like, do you think it protects the photographers a little bit?
I mean, I like being in the union. I mean, there are protections that they afford us, like their safety. There is, there's mandated rest every day. Um, if we have to drive more than 30 miles, then they have to pay us mileage. If we work past 14 hours, it's mandated. They have to give me a free ride home or a hotel room. It's really, I mean, the safety protections are the number one reason, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, like my family, we get our health insurance through it. It's paid for mostly by the productions. So for every day that I work, there's a small little piece of my paycheck that goes to the union that funds our health insurance. And there's also a pension plan that is contributed by the producers. So I'm very pro union.
And
I
also
mean,
it's set rates, like a minimum on different things for what you're doing for your kit and everything else.
true. Well, the kit fees are not dictated by the union. The only thing that the union dictates is by hourly, and they don't really dictate it. They say this is the lowest number I can get, which is scale. And if you have more, the more experience you have, the more ability you have to negotiate an overscale rate. But like meal penalties is the one that's the most interesting, I think. So every 6 hours they have to break the crew for a meal. And so if they go past 6 hours, then every 6 or 12 minutes they have to pay a penalty to every single person on the set. And can be a pretty hefty amount of money when you're thinking about there's 100 people working.
Yeah, I would imagine if you go an hour over, somebody's screaming in the background.
No, if you
Yeah,
go 10 minutes over, there's someone screaming in the background.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And if I go past 10 hours, I get time and a half. If I go past, I think it's 14 hours, I get double time. So,
Huge benefits on that. Trust me, I've worked on shows that I was the non-union person that was there for the network shooting some stuff just in a weird scenario, which probably shouldn't have happened. And everyone else is talking about all the overtime they're getting and all the stuff. I'm like, cool, great. I'm glad for
yeah.
you guys.
Yeah. But I mean, you were getting paid pretty handsomely as a stills photographer at the network.
Yeah, I mean, it was good. But
So,
go ahead.
question about just sort of what you're shooting and kind of, so you're basically getting a day rate to go shoot, right? And you're shooting for whatever time is there. In terms of those images, you're just passing everything off, right? Because some people that might be like, listen or watching to this, they're used to maybe more like a commercial shoot where, you get paid X amount for X number of images, and they maybe have those images worked on or retouched themselves, pass them off. How does kind of all that differ for what you're doing for unit stuff?
Well, I mean, the biggest difference is, especially when you're working in entertainment, is that you cannot keep the copyright at all because the images are so specific to that television show. So, like, you can think about it like, when Mel Gibson did Braveheart, the stills photographer, can you imagine if they had owned the copyright of the Braveheart images? They could have sold those images to sell whatever products they wanted. And it could have been like Braveheart soap, whatever. So when you're working in the entertainment space, you rarely get to keep the copyright. The only thing that, like, especially when you're working with celebrities, because they want to control their image very, very tightly. Now, if you're working for a magazine, there's differences there. You could shoot, let's say, um, well, this happened with me with Jack Black. I photographed Jack Black for a magazine when he was promoting Jumanji. And so I still retain the copyright of those images. Now, of course, if someone wanted to buy a Jack Black picture, that would have to be approved by Jack Black's team. So I would have to reach out to them to get
Mhm.
permissions.
Now, because you work with multiple different networks, Peacock, Netflix, HBO, it goes across. How often, because I know, because we've had these conversations, you don't give them everything. Some of them want certain selects, you narrow it down to a certain number. How much does that change? And what do you find like the most common thread? Like for a day of shooting, how many do you actually send to them?
It really, really differs. I find that the bigger the show, the more pictures they want you to send. So, and you can't be ridiculous about it. You don't want to send 6,000 images every day. That would kind of cause a problem, I would think. But like, smaller networks like HGTV I've worked for, they say they want the 200 best pictures every single day that you shoot. And so part of my day would be I would shoot for 8 hours or so, and then I would go back to the hotel or come home and just really pick the best select images and then give them just those pictures. Now with Peacock and HBO and Netflix and everybody else, I go through my images, I get rid of the stuff that's patently bad, stuff that's out of focus or misfires, which there's plenty of those. Or if the scene has a lot of action and I'm shooting a little bit more high speed, if someone is walking across my frame, I don't need to give them 40 pictures of that. So I would take out every other one to give them 20 pictures of that motion. Um, but then that ends up being maybe 1,200 pictures a day, usually.
Mhm.
It's usually, and some people want the raw files and a small JPEG. Some people want raw files and a full size JPEG. Some people just want the JPEGs.
So, if anyone wanted to get into shooting unit photography that doesn't have any relationships in the entertainment industry, and they just love movies and shows and think it's interesting and want to get on set and start shooting, where would somebody even start to do something like that? Because it is kind of a little bit of a community and a closed off world.
Well, it's a very niche focused thing. I would say you have to get some set experience first. So and I've mentored people that are trying to break into what I do. At least once a year, I'll have be a part of the formal mentorship program through the union. So I would say the first thing to do is work on anything that you possibly can that would give you some set experience. It could be a student film, it could be a zero budget um, movie. Like, there are plenty of people are out there trying to shoot their first film for $50,000. And so if you can go on that set for a day and shoot, that's going to give you some set experience so that you can take at least some images to the networks and be like, hey, here I am. This is what I do. Um, Kind of the next tier up from that is reality shows, because most of those shows are non-union and they shoot them all over the world. So it doesn't matter where you are. There's probably a reality show being shot somewhere within driving distance of your home. So, keep your eye on the trade magazines, on Variety and Hollywood Reporter, and there's some really good Facebook groups that talk about productions like, hey, we're shooting this here, and we have a 3-day small movie shoot we're doing, you just send them a note and say, "Hey, I'm a stills photographer. I'm looking for some experience. Can I come and shoot on your production?"
Mhm.
So once you get, 20 images that are solid, that show that you know what you're doing and you know how to be around the cameras without the dolly running over your toe or, being in the background, then you can start sending your work to the networks. Um, but, it's like any part of photography, whether it's sports or portraiture or anything, there's a lot of people out there doing it. So you just kind of have to just keep plugging away until it happens.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think the better people rise to the top. Like here in Atlanta, obviously, there was a huge boom of shows and movies, and it's like you hit it at a right time, and you had the experience, and it's easier for you to get in because you have done this for so long. You can show how to do, you know what you're doing, and it really pays off. I think you and I have discussed it many times, the being on set and the set decorum, and we see so many social media people show up that haven't had that experience, and they're just running around with their iPhone, and you're like, calm down a little bit. So I think that, is there any advice you can say to people who are starting out, of like, what is the easy, simple advice on set? You've mentioned some about wearing black and blending in, but what's some easy ones?
I mean, it's kind of like being a doctor, it's like do no harm, you don't want to kill the patient. And that's the same with being a stills photographer, or if you're shooting video, a BTS shooter, which is there's people like me that do it only with a video camera. Um, you don't want to be a distraction. So you don't want to stand in the actor's eye line. So it's like, for me, my eye line is just right down this alleyway. So if someone was over on this side or someone was over here, they would not be distracting to me. Um, don't move around. So once they start camera rolling, you kind of need to stay in your spot, because if you're moving, people are going to look at you. Um, um, yeah, your cameras have to be completely silent, and I'm not talking about mostly silent. I'm saying completely silent. I have one lens. I have my 85 1.4, I think, is the one I have. I can't really remember exactly what the aperture on that lens is, but when you go to f2, you can hear the aperture blades scrape across each other, and it's not really that loud, and it wouldn't bother anybody else except for the guy holding the microphone, who,
Mhm.
like, when I start shooting, boom op will, like, look at me, like he can hear those blades moving across each other, and there's nothing worse.
Yeah.
So, the only time when I use that lens, I have to shoot it wide open, which is fine.
Well, with new video camera technology, they use so little lights on sets sometimes these days that, like, you might need to keep it wide open.
Right. I mean,
Mhm.
and yeah, and that's another point. I mean, all my lenses are 2.8 or faster. There's a lot of inexpensive lenses out there that have that floating aperture, like they'll be f4 to 5.6. And those, I would never be able to use those lenses unless it's a bright sunny day. But I mean, we're rarely outside on a bright sunny day. It's always inside and lit by a candle.
I mean,
As moody as they
seriously.
can get it, right?
Well, when you were working on the staircase, it's like it's a dark murder
Yeah.
scenes for most of it when they're not in the courtroom. So it's like you were
Right.
nonstop on that. So I get what you mean by that.
Yeah, like on Teacup, part of the 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 show was the fact that they've lost power, like, they didn't have any electricity. So all the night scenes were lit by what it looked like they were lit by lanterns or candles, and, of course, there are some supplemental lights that they're putting on the sides, but still, it's really, really, really dark.
So what was your favorite show or movie that you've worked on the last couple of years?
Well, I mean, it it all started. My whole unit photography career started on Watchmen for HBO. Um, I'd been talking to the people at HBO, and they knew who I was, and for the for the pilot, they wanted to use a photographer out of Texas, but he was having some health issues. And so they called me and they said, "Hey, can you just work on the first week of the pilot?" And we were shooting the scenes. If you know the show, and episode 101, it all has to do with the Tulsa race massacres that happened in 1921. And so they took over this whole piece of downtown Cedartown, Georgia, and they dressed it out to look like 1921. And they had 200 extras, and they had animals and horses and goats and guys fighting, people in clan wear, and it was just crazy. And I got a 12-step ladder, so it's like the tallest ladder the grips departments would have. And so I got up on this, I don't know, it was probably 20 feet off in the air, and I shot these wide shots of this fight scene with 200 people battling it out. And on the side of the shot, you could see the two main characters like coming out of this theater. And they're this just the coolest picture. And I sent that to HBO that day. Like I screenshotted it and sent it out to HBO. And my photo editors at HBO said that that was the picture that got me the whole show.
It's
Amazing.
awesome.
Yeah,
And for you
That's really cool.
specifically, like being from Oklahoma and
true.
having that history that you've known and been, and then be shooting that. And then it also helps that they filmed most of that show like a few miles from your house.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was great. I mean, they shot in Decatur, Georgia, which is really it's about a mile from my house, and the main stages were south of the Atlanta airport, so that was a little bit of a drive. But the best part about it was working with Regina King. Um, she was the main character in Watchmen, and then she got her first directing gig with Netflix, and so I got that show because of my connections to Regina. So I mean that show, and it won 11 Emmys, so it was really high profile at the time. So it really snowballed everything for me.
Well, and I think that's a good lesson too, because building that relationship and that trust that you worked with her, even if you're not like talking every day, there's at least a thing there where it's like they know that you're going to deliver, you give them some images to show them, things like that. Then when they have their next thing, not even talent, the director, the camera department, all these people, because how much of your work comes that way where it's from a previous show than working with them on something else?
I mean, most of it,
Yeah.
most of my work. I mean, and that's a universal truth for all photographers. Like if you have a good working relationship with people and you deliver what they need, they're going to hire you again. They're not going to dump you. And if you are difficult or overly demanding or lazy or slow to deliver your images or unwilling to do the the things that seem like busy work, like metadata, you're not going to get hired again. So it's all about relationships.
It's a big ego versus just taking your ego out of it and trying to be as helpful as possible.
100%. And if you're liked on set, if you're friendly, if you are accommodating, and if you understand that there's sometimes you're not going to get the picture because you're can't be there, shouldn't be there, and you understand that that's just part of the process is not being able to shoot. I know a lot of people that get all bent out of shape when they're thrown off set or asked not to shoot or can't find the angle, and they get all grumpy about it. And you're like, well, it's just sometimes you just can't, and
Well,
that's okay.
I think that's a good lesson too of like sets are almost always running a little bit behind. And you have to be able to read that room and know when they are running behind, don't try to get in there and don't try to do something and just go with the flow.
Especially if they told you not to. I know there are a lot of people that have been told, "Don't shoot this scene," and then they try to sneak something out of it, and then they get caught, and then they get yelled at, and then the producers um, have to talk to you, and that's the worst. Or they just call your client. and then you're not asked back. It's a bummer.
You don't want
Yeah.
that.
Well, I think we can wrap it up here for today. Mark, thanks a lot for indulging us and having this
Sure.
long conversation about unit photography. I'm sure at some point we'll have to have you back on to talk about some other things since you don't just shoot unit photography.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll talk commercial work and working together for 12 years and all the, we could have a whole story time if we wanted to.
Yeah,
just
we
an
could
Alec
talk.
Baldwin episode.
Oh, no, we're not going to have an Alec Baldwin, but I would say we could have a whole episode on how this young kid comes up to me at the Braves game and says, "Hey, I want to be a photographer too. How can I do that?" And that one little conversation started Jeremy's career and a lifelong friendship between he and I.
Yeah.
So,
And I feel bad that I'm going to beat you on the golf course because you've done so much for me. But on Friday, you're going down. But I do still have my Braves. It's framed in my office. I have the press pass from the day we met. I have your business card from all the way back then sitting as my remembering of where I started out. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
yeah,
Thanks, Mark.
anytime, anytime.
All right. We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.